The peoples and governments of Central America commemorate 201 years of independence from Spain's crown. President Vladimir Putin met with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping during the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Uzbekistan. Israeli occupation forces killed a Palestinian teenager and wounded 3 others in the northern West Bank village of Kfr Dan. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. With various commemorative events, the peoples and governments of Central America celebrate 201 years of independence. Nicaragua honors its independence with a record of social achievements that restore the rights of thousands of people. President Daniel Ortega urged for the continuation of work to guarantee health and education in all the country's communities. In Honduras, President Xiomara Castro will lead the central activities of the anniversary at the José de la Paz Herrera National Stadium in Tegucigalpa. For their part, Presidents Nayib Bukele of El Salvador and Rodrigo Chavez of Costa Rica will lead the central activities of the anniversary in their own capitals. Previously, Alejandro Giammattei, the President of Guatemala, participated in the hoisting of the national flag and the reading of the Act of Independence on September 15, 2018-21. The struggle for independence in the central region of the American continent lasted almost 10 years. The movement began with the first attempt at rebellion in El Salvador on November 5, 1811, and came to an end on September 15, 2018. When all the nations of Central America, with the exception of Panama, signed the Act of Independence of Central America. At the time, the Spanish crown had established the viceroyalty of the New Spain in the territory that today is known as Mexico. The first rebellion was organized with the priests Juan Manuel Rodriguez and Manuel José Arce, who were fed up with the laws established by the Spanish monarchy. In Guatemala, at least 9 people were killed and 20 others were injured early Thursday morning after a human stampede at the end of a concert for the national independence celebrations. According to a tweet from Guatemala's Red Cross, rescue officers and volunteer firefighters stabilized more than 20 injured people, while 9 died at the scene after a human stampede in a massive event in the city of Quetzaltenango, west of Guatemala City. According to local press reports, the victims were crushed as thousands of people tried to leave the area at the end of a concert in an open-air esplanade during a traditional event for the national holidays. Guatemala resumed the massive festivities to celebrate the Independence Day from Spain after a 2-year hiatus of these crowded events due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In El Salvador, the government has approved an extension to the state exception of the 6th. On Wednesday, on the eve of the Independence Day, the Legislative Assembly of El Salvador approved another 30-day extension to the state of exemption, first implemented back in March at a request by President Nayib Bukele, following a weekend when 87 homicides were committed. Over the past 6 months, some 50,000 people have been detained. This latest extension was requested by Security Minister Gustavo Villatoro and by Defense Minister René Merino. Also, the government has proposed reforms to the law against organized crime to broaden such concept, and to the special law for tapping telecommunications, and to the telecommunications law, which will allow them to obtain hard prosecuting evidence. Haiti's Minister of Social Affairs and Labor, Odney Pierre Cricot, announced on Wednesday a new increase in the price of fuels. The measure, approved by the Council of Ministers, comes amid protests throughout Haiti against the high cost of living. Now, the government has set the gallon of gasoline at the equivalent of $4.90, the gallon of diesel at $5.80, and kerosene at $5.76. Government officials said such fuel price increase is intended to draw resources for the implementation of social programs for the needy. However, hundreds have taken to the streets to protest against the government's decision and have questioned the announced social programs. Hundreds of high school and university students marched through downtown Santiago, calling for improvements in Chile's education system and a new constitution. The call was made by several student organizations, among them the Confederation of Chilean Students. Students' demands range from better internet access, better infrastructure, free transportation, paid and insured internships and tools, universal access to universities, and comprehensive sex education, among other points. Protesters tried to reach the Ministry of Education but were stopped by police forces. Several students were arrested afterwards. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping during the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Uzbekistan on Thursday. Both heads of state were joined by the leaders of India, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, and several other countries. The two leaders are in an ancient Silk Road city of Samarkand to attend a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a regional security group formed by China and Russia as a counterweight to the influence wielded by the United States. The summit is also a chance to counteract the West's actions, especially the U.S., which has led to the charge in imposing sanctions against Moscow and Beijing.
Attempts to create a unipolar world have recently acquired an absolutely ugly form and are completely unacceptable.
Moreover, the Chinese president expressed his willingness, together with Russia, to provide the world some guidance into stability.
Facing an ever-changing world era in history, China is willing to make efforts with Russia to assume the role of great powers and play the guiding role to inject stability and positive energy into the world rocked by social turmoil.
On Thursday, Iran signed a memorandum of obligations to become a permanent member of the Central Asian Security Body in the framework of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian stated that by signing the document for full membership, his country now has entered a new stage of various economic, commercial, transit, and energy cooperation. The statement came as leaders from China, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan gathered in the city of Samarkand for a summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a security group formed by Beijing and Moscow as counterweight to United States sanctions against both nations. A Chinese envoy called on all parties in the Iran nuclear talks to create the necessary conditions for reaching a binding deal instead of exaggerating the outstanding issues concerning Iran's nuclear safeguards. Wang Shan, deputy head of China's permanent mission to the United Nations in Vienna, made the remarks at a meeting of the International Atomic Agency Board of Governors convened to deliberate the Iran nuclear issue. Noting that the nuclear talks entered the final critical stage, the Chinese envoy said the United States, as the responsible for the Iran nuclear crisis, should make political decisions and respond to the Middle East countries' reasonable demands to promote an early deal. One also stated that the success of the talks depends on whether a solution acceptable to all parties can be found to resolve the outstanding safeguards issues. The United States Senate passed a bill to strengthen ties with Taiwan to prevent alleged aggressions from China. The Senate's Foreign Relations Committee approved a bill to provide $6.5 billion to fund arms and other support for Taiwan. The bill marks a milestone, implying the first time Washington has turned into law direct funding for arms supplies to the island. The bill will also require the White House to impose sanctions on some 5 state-owned Chinese banks if Taipei determines that China has engaged in an alleged escalation of aggression against Taiwan. Beijing criticized the legislation ahead of the vote, accusing the U.S. of undermining the One China policy. The European Union proposed on Thursday new legislation that will force manufacturers to ensure that devices connected to the Internet meet security and cybersecurity standards, aiming to make the 27-nation bloc less vulnerable to attacks. According to EU data, a ransomware attack takes place every 11 seconds, and the global annual cost of cybercrime was estimated over $5 billion in 2021. The EU Commission said an increase in cyber attacks was witnessed during the coronavirus crisis. The law, proposed to be called the Cyber Resilience Act, aims at taking off the EU market all products with digital elements that are not well enough protected. Market authorities will have the power to withdraw or recall non-compliant devices and to fine companies that will not abide by the rules. And Roger Federer announced on Thursday that he is retiring from tennis after next week's Laver Cup, revealing his decision on social media. Federer leaves competitive tennis as a 20-time Grand Slam champion, third all-time among men's players behind only contemporaries Rafael Nadal with 22 and Novak Djokovic with 21 championships. Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, along with Andy Murray, are set to play together for the first time when they compete from September 23rd to 25th as part of Team Europe at the Laver Cup in London. Named after Australian player Rod Laver, the 3-day team event sets 6 of Europe's top players against 6 from the rest of the world. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Israeli occupation forces killed a Palestinian teenager and wounded 3 others in the northern West Bank village of Kfar Dan. Jenin government hospital director Wazan Bark said a 17-year-old Palestinian boy was killed after being shot in the head by Israeli soldiers during a raid on the village. With Thursday's killing, lately there have been 149 Palestinian citizens killed by Israeli forces, out of which 34 in Jenin. Local media has denounced that the intensity of the Israeli attacks with gas bombs and grenades is keeping citizens in that region terrified. On Thursday, Angola's president-elect, João Lourenço, took the oath of office for a second term as the nation's president at a ceremony held in Luanda, the capital of the country. On August 29th, the MPLA was declared the winner of the 2022 general elections by gaining 51.17% of the votes, while the nation's largest opposition party, the National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, UNITA, gained 43.95%. The National Electoral Commission, CNE, also announced that the MPLA won 124 of the 220 National Assembly seats, whereas UNITA earned 90 seats in Parliament. The remaining parties elected 2 deputies each in the National Assembly. The elected deputies will be sworn in on Friday. Fuel prices in Kenya surged to record highs on Thursday, 2 days after Kenya's newly elected President William Ruto was inaugurated. The new fuel prices announcement came from the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority and will remain in force until October 14th. The price of petrol in the country increased by $1.50 per liter. These price hikes came at a time when small-scale businesses and Kenyans are struggling with post-coronavirus economic difficulties, regional drought, and the high cost of wheat due to the Ukraine conflict.
The way fuel has gone so high means everything, even maize flour, is increasing in price because everything depends on fuel for transport. So nothing will progress in Kenya. Things will be terrible if fuel prices remain this high.
Now we move on to other topics. A senior Maldives government minister warned that unless action is taken now, his people will become climate refugees, forced to leave their homeland because of the effects of global warming. Fisheries Minister Hussain Rashid Hassan's statement came as scientists from the visiting Necton mission and their Maldivian counterparts undertake a 35-day expedition to map and sample the waters of the low-lying Indian Ocean nation. From the air, the Maldives is a picture postcard paradise, but vital reef systems have been badly impacted by global warming, fracturing natural sea defenses. The Fisheries Minister also stressed the world has to pay attention to the problems sooner rather than later and find a quick solution. Experts and residents in Toulouse, the fourth largest city in France, are concerned about the lingering drought that has hit many countries in Europe so far this year. The climate crisis had led to this year's hottest summer in Europe on record, as droughts on the continent are getting worse each year. In the meantime, environmental protection groups are making long-term plans to deal with a potentially catastrophic situation. Water restrictions remain in place across much of France, with outdoor spaces that are normally lush and green now turning tender and dry. Extra water continues to be released into the Garonne, which is home to around 6 migratory fish species like salmon, which swim upstream from where the river meets the sea. About 1.6 million people was evacuated and flights grounded in eastern China as the region was battered with strong winds and rain on Thursday by Typhoon Muifa. The cyclone entered the eastern Chinese province of Jiangsu on Thursday morning, and its wind dropped to 90 kilometers per hour, the Central Meteorological Observatory reported. Air traffic slowly resumed in Shanghai as the storm moved north, but most flights from the city's 2 airports were canceled on Thursday morning. Port and fishing operations also resumed after the passage of the storm. Shanghai and its neighboring region were hit last week by Typhoon Hinnam-nor, which caused school closures in parts of Zhejiang. According to state media, Muifa is the 12th typhoon to hit China this year. Now we address other topics. Japan reported over 100,000 new COVID-19 cases and 184 deaths from the highly contagious respiratory disease. According to data from the country's public broadcaster NHK, the Nippon nation has recorded more than 20 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 and around 40,000 deaths from the disease. Currently, nearly 400 patients are in severe condition in the country. Meanwhile, more than 19 million patients had been discharged from hospital after making recovery across the East Asian nation. Japan has seen its seventh wave of COVID-19 infections since July, with the number of new infections and fatalities in a single day remaining at a high level. We have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And you can also follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.